I have a feeling, and it shall be revealed. Right? That's really what today's lesson is all about. Because one of the fun things we've been doing, tomorrow night we have just 2 weeks left in our 8-week Troward class, Judge Troward's class. And we've had a lot of fun re-looking again. You know, you can stay on the left side of your brain to understand the logic of our direct connection to the infinite. However, the left side of your brain won't get you where you want to go. You got to integrate all sides of your brain, the part that's logical and the part that can feel. And you put those things together and you'll end up with a faith that is stronger than steel, way stronger than steel, because it'll take you past the dimension into every dimension. That's pretty strong, yes? And that's the kind of faith that I would wish for everybody. That's the kind of faith that I know the great master teacher walked on the planet, that it shall be revealed, that it shall be revealed. And it shall be revealed as we understand the very primary lesson of his life, which is that you need to free yourself by means of forgiveness. You need to forgive yourself in order to move forward. So when we understand the term forgiveness, what we understand is that the world is a world of love. That the world of love is given, and it's up to us to reveal it. It is already given in its entirety, but it's up to us to reveal it. So I wanted to talk, one of the things that Judge Thomas Troward talks about as he looks at the impeccable logic of the law of mind, or our connection to infinite intelligence, or our connection to the creative process. One of the great things that he reminded us is that we see God and we know God by eternal things. Now, this is something that the great metaphysician Ernest Holmes also spoke a lot about, that we know God by the eternal verities of God, the varieties of God that are always the same. So, for example, Michelangelo lived in a time where there was beauty. Is that correct? Do we not live in a time where there is beauty? So beauty is beyond time. It's an eternal verity. It belongs to God. It's always there. We would say the impulsion of the universe, the reason that everything exists, is because God loves itself and wants to discover itself in each of us as we discover ourselves. Yes? So it's one big flow of discovery, self-awakening, and reawakening, and being born again, and this flow is happening all of the time. And God is wanting us to see that. So we would say love is an eternal verity. Joy is eternal verity. Right? Have you ever noticed that when you travel around the world into any culture, people are laughing. People are finding connection and joy, and smiles are on their face. When I just got back last weekend, my wife and I were in Mexico, and I was sitting, I like the dawn, so my wife is not really a dawn person. So I'm a dawn person, so I'm very often up at dawn. I love to watch the day bloom through the morning, the dawn time. And so I was sitting around this beautiful hotel, the pool, and of course the staff at the hotel begins working very, very early. So almost as the dawn is coming, they're straightening out pools and putting up towels and making things nice for the morning that's coming. But I was watching the souls in the morning, noticing that I wasn't making them smile. I wasn't making them greet each other and have embraces when they saw each other and share words of laughter. They were doing that because that's who they are. That's the dawn of a new day, if you recognize it's the dawn of a new day. That's the dawn of, well, maybe I'm working here in paradise, but nonetheless, it is paradise, right? And this sort of realization that they have it and they share it. So when we were leaving the airport, there was a young college girl and her father that were walking around. Apparently she was doing some kind of survey for college. And she said, can we ask you the question? The father says, my daughter's doing a survey for her college. Can she ask you a question? We said, certainly. And she turned to my wife and says, what is your favorite part of Mexico? And my wife said, the guacamole. Perfectly good answer. And she turned to me, and what is your favorite part of Mexico? And I said, the people. Because of that willingness to greet the day, because of that willingness to share in love, just because they're living in paradise and they have a job and it's okay, life is good. And they celebrate that everywhere. And you see that in every culture. It doesn't matter where you go. The people have found a way to reveal joy. So joy is a quality of God that we know is always there. It's always there. But now there's another part of God, and this is why I have the lesson. You probably wonder, the Model T and beyond. What the heck is Dr. Harry talking about now? Right? The Model T and beyond. Well, because we very often forget that God is not only in these eternal verities, these varieties of life that are always present, but God is also there in every system, in every principle that exists. God is the principle itself, because the principle will last beyond time. So you all understand the idea that for thousands and thousands of years, men looked at the birds and women looked at the birds, and the conclusion was that if human beings were supposed to fly, they would have wings. But was there not a principle of aerodynamics that was sitting there in potential the whole time? It was always there. We didn't just like all of a sudden invent the principle, did we? We discovered the principle, didn't we? The Wright brothers opened the door to a principle. Well, the principle began, they flew 140 feet and didn't know how to land a plane. Now we fly around the world at faster than the speed of sound if we choose to. So wow, and we know how to navigate the thing. So all of that came out of the discovery of a principle. And did you notice that when the Wright brothers discovered that principle, they couldn't keep the principle in the borders of the United States? Like, here, the principle of aerodynamics, we found it, so we're copywriting it, and nobody else can use that principle. Do you know that that didn't happen, and that can't happen, right? Same thing when Ben Franklin looked at the principle of electricity. The first thing he did with the principle was see that that key could conduct the charge. Nobody else knew what to do with that charge, but there was a potential there, right? And then when we finally figured out how to take that potential and put it into wires, whoa, look what happened out of the principle. The principle was always there, but it got larger and larger and larger. And again, the principle of electricity was based on the principle of the wheel. What do you mean the wheel? Well, the wheel was one of the early discoveries, like the discovery of fire. But it was a principle, it was discovered. Once you discovered it, then you could figure out how to harness it, yes? But you had to find the principle first. And then once the Neanderthals found fire, could they keep it? No, this is our fire. Nobody else can have fire. Was it everywhere present, the principle, and what you could do with it? And then from the wheel, we got leverage. And from leverage, we learned how to build things. And then from the wheel, we go farther forward to we needed things to spin faster. And we invented machinery, and we needed ball bearings, which was the wheel. And then ball bearings led to ever increasing fast. And now we have wheels that led to machines, that led to flying machines. You see that every one of those things is a principle. The principle of electricity, the principle of gravity, the principle of aerodynamics. They're God. Principles are God. And just because you only know a little bit about the principle, in Ben Franklin's day, he only figured out a little bit about the principle. But when you fly around the world now, there are cities lit up all around the world. The principle has moved. And the principle of gravity. Well, those ball bearings working with magnets made generators. And that's what made electricity everywhere. The principle got expanded. Yes? So what is it that we are interested in? We're interested in the principle of the creative process. And now that has gone through a lot of different thinking, that if you prayed right, if you followed the rules of the Pope or the rules of the King or the rules of the Queen and prayed a certain way, the principle might work for you. Now if we had an intercessory, see if I could get a hold of that principle, well then I could get control. So you can't have God directly because you have to have me. And then so I need you to put money in the plate and support my institution so that you can have me so that you can get God. But the principle was always there, yes? and not to be seized on. Not to say the aerodynamics belongs to the Wright brothers and North Carolina. No. Aerodynamics belongs to the world, and once you reveal it, the world will find it, and you can't hold it out. That's why we say something known someplace is known every place. Once it's revealed, no one can stop the revelation process. It shall be revealed, yes? So this is why we were looking at what is the principle of my direct connection to the infinite? As Jesus said, do you not know ye are gods? Message back to Jesus. We've been hanging out for another 2,500 years and we still don't quite get the concept. Do you not know ye are gods? That you are directly connected to this one. That this one is receiving, but we didn't know about the principle of subconscious mind. We didn't know about the principle of subconscious mind until just the last century. The end of the 1800s. We began to be aware that there seems to be a level of mind happening all the time, that's active all the time, whether I'm thinking about it or not. Oh, and this level of mind, we begin to think there was a theory called ether. Those of you in the class know we have to keep saying that theory was short-lived, but look what happened. They didn't go, there's something that moves upon ether. No, they changed it around since then. Science says, no, there doesn't seem to be something moving upon something. There just appears to be one thing. Energy and matter are equal and interchangeable. There seems to be just one thing. Oh, but there's motion inside this one thing. Yes, and there are principles inside the one thing. And while there's motion everywhere, the principles don't move. They stay there. And the principles have potential in them that we have yet to see. Because now, hear what happened in the last 20 years. The last 20 years, modern science says, well, maybe it isn't billiard balls. Maybe it's not all molecules put together in configurations. That maybe there's an energy before it becomes molecules in configuration. And so now we're trying to deal with, well, before it becomes molecules, it has a certain set of rules. And once they become molecules, they seem to have a different set of rules. But they all seem to be connected. Do you see that we're just at the dawn of revealing what's the principle? What is that? What's behind there that would lead from fire to Model Ts to ball bearings to computers to space? And you're carrying in your pocket, you're carrying a phone. Bigger computer, more computer power in this phone than in the entire Apollo rocket program. Whoa. You mean this phone could get rockets to the moon? Yep, this one can do that. Connected to the big one, not by itself, but connected. Oh, well, what's the principle? The principle is that now we hear science says, well, human beings appear to be wired for God. Yes, because you're not a sole biological unit all sitting there all by yourself. The biological unit is the configuration that your subconscious is holding together for you. It's this pattern of perfection, but you're the thing inside the biological unit, greater than the biological unit, yet the creator of the biological unit. What? But you're not a separate thing because the life force in me is the same as the life force in you. You don't know how to make the life force in you do its thing, and I don't know how to make it in me do its thing. In fact, I discover it. Do I not? Don't I discover that I'm alive? I discover that I'm alive, and guess what? There's a principle in that aliveness. And you may only know this much about the principle that is vast and infinite. Yes? So we then say, well, if this life force is in me, then it must be connected to the life force itself. Because with or without me, the life force exists. Yes? So I don't create the life force, so it must be independent of me. But I seem to be part of it. So what is the principle of that connection? And can I work on that principle to reveal something? Oh, yes, you certainly can. The principle of that connection is birthless and deathless and changeless, beyond time. It is yet all motion, yet that which never moves. Guess what you are? One with that thing that is the principle itself and the motion within it. You're both, and you can't stop it. But you could explore the principle of it. The very principle of my own being. Right? And so the principle of mind, now the way we understand it then is, so the quantum mechanics says the observer looking at anything affects the thing it's looking at. That's what the science says, for sure. So what that means is there's no such thing as the thing happening without you being part of it. Whatever it is that's happening, you're part of it. And therefore, your connection to it exists in a principle, does it not? A principle that you may know a little about, or a principle you might like to know a lot about. Yes? That, because it says right here, whatsoever things you declare, it will be established for you. So the light will shine on your ways. Let me say, you will also declare a thing, and it will be established for you. That's what it says in the Bible. It says, right, you shall declare a thing, and it will be established for you. So light will shine on your ways. I will declare a thing, and light will shine on my ways. Well, how could the thing that declares light be anything other than light? Wouldn't you have to be light in order to declare light? Oh, hello. And so we come back to where I said in the beginning. We're looking at a world that's creating waves on the surface. If you take a small boat on the surface waves, it's going to get splashed around. If you anchor that boat on the infinite, it's going to be safe. It may get splashed around, but it's going to be safe. Do you see? So we're interested in this principle of how I belong to the universe and how I can declare a thing and it will be done for me in the light. But I have to understand then the person declaring the thing must also be the light that's being declared. Oh, I think maybe I should explore this principle. Do you see? That what we know about it so far is only the use that we have made of it so far. Just like if the Wright brothers had said, well, 147 feet, that's about as far as anybody could ever fly. Right? The principle, we haven't figured out how to use it in every area. But now here's what we know, is the use of it is in its nature. The use of the principle is in its nature. Not my nature, its nature. So that the way that I can use the principle is any way I want to in accord with its nature. Do you see that? It's very different. That's what we call the difference between liberty and license, right? You are given absolute liberty to use the principle in its nature. You do not have the license to use the principle outside of its nature. And any attempt to do so will reflect back on you. Because you're choosing to be disharmonious instead of harmonious. And it's a self-governing and self-protecting system. Oh, you mean the universe is going to be here whether I approve of it or not? Yes. But if you would like to be in the bliss of it, if you would like to be in the joy of it, if you would like to be in the love of it, if you'd like to be in the beauty of it, if you'd like to be in the freedom of it, you're going to have to choose to be in its nature. Oh, so what does that mean in today's world? Well, I sent you a letter a couple of days ago. I'll send you another letter this week. You're welcome to read them if you want to. So you don't have to be a metaphysician. In the Bible, it says things that are made are not made of things which do appear, correct? So what does that mean? Well, it means if it's made of stuff, before it was stuff, it had to be an idea. It had to be something invisible before it could be stuff. Yes. It has to be seen It has to be created in mind, right? So that's what we're looking at. You don't have to be a metaphysician to look out in the world and go, boy, people are getting a little antsy. People are like separating themselves and not coming together in unity and not seeing themselves as the one light together. Well, but that's simply not the way it is, but they're not seeing it that way. So, well, wait a minute. That's an interesting conundrum. That's not the way it is, but the people are not seeing that way. So if people are not seeing that way, and you know that that's not the way it is, what's your obvious role? To see it correctly. Do you see that? Well, that's not the way it is. Let me see things as they actually are. Do you follow? And it's not like, oh, let me defer. Oh my God, let me get out of there. Let me not participate with them. No. If they're not seeing right, you see right. If they're seeing prejudice or fear or hatred, I mean, really? We're going to separate each other by race or color or creed or ways of being? We're going to separate each other when we already know there's only one light and it's everywhere present and it's equally distributed? Well, you can't believe that there's one light everywhere present, equally distributed, and in any way participate in prejudice. It makes no sense. It's crazy. It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. There's no principle there. Do you follow? So when we see hate, we have to know, I don't have to fight to make love win. When you turn the lights off, Michael, turn all the lights off. Okay, so now turn the lights back on. Oh, did you feel the war? The Star Wars happened. The darkness and the light just fought each other. Did that happen? Or did you just bring the light and the darkness went away? There's no fight in being a light worker in the world. There's no fight in being a lover of the world. It is the place where you see things as they actually are. And God needs us, the people who are waking up, to see things as they actually are. It's not time to step backwards and figure out who deserves rights. All people deserve rights. All people are human beings. And God has no favorite human beings. You might have a special relationship with God, but God has no favorite human beings. They're all special to God. Everyone is beloved of God. And when you walk in the world that way, the world greets you that way. It's just like you turned on the light and the darkness doesn't fight you anymore. But if you do the other thing and then turn on the news and get all upset about who's hating who and who's right about right and which lives matter, that life matter, this life matter, which life, no. One light, one love, one truth belonging to all people, all the time, everywhere present. And God says, can you live that way? And I say, well, since it's a principle, of course I can live that way, because that's to live like God. To live in tune with the principles of God is to live like God, is it not? Oh, so everything is a discovery of a principle. And principles are not respecters of people. They're not respective of individualities. They are there to be revealed by the one who works with the principle. Do you see that? It just is revealed by the one who works with the principle. And that's how it is every principle. Now you have been learned by the course of your spiritual journey, you have learned that you are one with the one. That means you are one with all the eternal verities, and you are one with every principle. And it's not the principle that's going to change, it's your understanding of the principle. So here's an example. My son is not very good at texting his parents back. So, we have to text and wait because he's not very good at texting his parents back. But it doesn't mean that we're not in communication, because he vibrates very close to me. So we're in communication, whether he's turning the text back at night. So I had left him a voicemail, and he hadn't returned the call. And so the other morning, I'm in the living room, and I left my cell phone in the living room, went into the bedroom to get dressed, and I said to myself, my son's going to call. And just then, the phone rang, and I knew I had to run across the house because I knew he was going to call. Now, that's mind and vibration communicating without the cell phone. Do you see that? And so when I told my son, I knew you were going to call, I had to run across the phone to get it, and my son laughed because he already knows that he's in touch with me. He already knows that there's a connection. So he just laughed. He said, well, that's how that works, huh, Dad? I said, yep, that's exactly how that works. But you see, that's a principle that we're just beginning to understand. And you don't need cell phones in order to connect in mind. You don't need cell phones. How about that? You ever say, Dad, I was just about to say that. I was going to say just exactly that. Why? Because you're vibrating in mind at the same place, and you're so close that you just got the same thought at the same time. And you say, no, it was my thought. No, it was the thought, and you were both tuned in at the same time. Do you see how that works? So we're beginning to learn that we can use any principle. Any principle of God is designed to be harmonious with every other principle of God. So when we begin to explore the principle of how I can bring light, and how I can bring peace, and how I can bring love, and how I can bring joy by just being you, now that's a heck of a principle. That's a heck of a principle. I can be more of me, and the more me I become, the more principle is available to me, and the more power I appear to have. But I would say, don't get upset with the word power. Use the word good. And the more good I appear to have, and the more good that appears to move around me, and the more good begins to show up because of who I am being in the world. Discovering a principle and learning that you have the authority to use every principle at the highest degree you can perceive it. And every principle is not fully explored yet. Not the principle of electricity, not the principle of bits and bytes, not the principle of the internet, not the principle of aerodynamics, no principle has been fully explored. And the whole kingdom is yours. Model T and beyond. If I just know that I belong to the eternal verities of God and to every principle of God. And God is not withholding. God is waiting for you to turn to it and ask about it and use it more and experiment with it and play with it and just use it in accord with its nature, and you cannot get hurt. Whoa. I think maybe we might have been birthed into the kingdom of heaven, and all we need to do is wake up. So wherever you are in your journey, whether you're facing the most difficult challenge you've ever faced, or whether you're looking for a greater good than you've ever known before, all of it is yours. And all you need to do is make room. There's room in my house for all. Enter and be not afraid. Eat of the fruit, drink the wine. All is yours, and you are welcome. So wherever you are in your journey, I invite you to think on these things. And together, let's explore the possibilities. Namaste.